have expectations of us, questions of us, and I know I'm getting blamed by all sides, you know, but that's what it's like to be chairman, I suppose. But one of the questions that was asked of me was in the chronology of the removal. There was a couple of dates. One of the dates was a motion to dismiss on that was filed on January 8th. The outcome of removal was on January 13th. The response to the motion to dismiss happened after the removal on January 14th. And I've looked at each of those documents myself to verify that that's the case. And the substance of the motion to dismiss was that the 60 days from the time that the hearing was established was not complied with. And I have a copy, I just got it tonight, a copy of the order on January 14th, the day after the removal happened, from the hearing officer that acknowledges that the 60 days was not complied with, but that he, in his interpretation, that he believed he has the authority not to have to stay within the 60 days timeline that is in the Constitution and in the code. And so the lingering question that I think needs to be answered is, did the hearing officer have the authority to ignore the Constitution and the code with respect to the 60 days? I have a copy of the order where he basically explains why he believes he has the authority not to have to follow the code, but it is a lingering question. So I don't know where we go with it, because if the hearing removed somebody and there was a motion to dismiss on the 60 days and they did the removal the day before they responded to the motion to dismiss on the substance of it, I guess the question from the board is, did we delegate the authority of the to the hearing board to interpret the code and the Constitution? So
I think pretty clearly you did. There is no appeal. And the board set up a process that goes to outside the judges and hearing panel, and from that point on, the tribal court, the board, the staff, none of us have any role or involvement or connection other than the tribal court judge was designated the role of simply communicating, but that was the only authority that was left. It's all vested in the hearing officers.
So with respect to, because we've been through removals before, and in recent history, in 2003, my understanding is when that removal, when the board voted to establish the hearing board, that they had 60 days from the time that that was issued to their final outcome, and that they did not have the authority to extend it, you know, another 30 or 60 days or whatever. Because if I look at September 17th was when the board voted to establish the hearing board, so my understanding is they had October 17th, November 17th, pursuant to the code and the Constitution by which to make their outcome. Now, I realize the reality is that the practicality of that and the scheduling, and also the defendant requested herself to extend it, but the question, I guess, that needs to be definitive, and I don't think it should trip up anything we're doing today. I'll make that clear. Is that the committee, the hearing board, had the authority to overlook the timeline both in the removal code and in the Constitution. So. Okay. Denise.
Right, and I think it warrants a written legal opinion on that, because the board can extend the 60 days or change the date. And because Rita asked for a hearing date change, that it should have still been done within the 60 days. Just because the date was changed a few days doesn't make it. It still has to happen within the 60 days. They can't go past that. So I'd like to see a written opinion on that, because we have been getting contacted by members on that exact thing. So a lot of issues with that.
Anybody else on the board? Denise, or Darcy, I'm sorry.
Yes, and I would like to see a written legal opinion also on the fact there's a lot of situations and different things that came out of this
All right, so with that, we will open the meeting. Oh, John.
I'm going to stick my neck out here. I mean, I honestly haven't read that order of opinion, but the board delegated to this process, the hearing officer and the hearing panel, the authority to make the decision provided that it's not appealable. And I could look at it, I could give you a written opinion, we could ask Bruce Green to give you a written opinion. None of those, and those are all fine and good, we could get lots of written opinions. But legally, the only opinion that matters, you have a written opinion, you're holding it in your hand, I presume. The parties made a motion, the hearing officer issued an order ruling on that motion, that is a written opinion from the individual that the board basically set up through this process to make these decisions. I may disagree with it, I can't tell you that, I haven't read it. I'm happy to read it and tell you whether I agree with it or not, but what I'm saying to you is that will not change the outcome because under the removal code, the hearing officer is essentially the Supreme Court. That's the final stop is the hearing process. It's an outside process. The code required that we get attorneys with no prior connection to the tribe, that have experience with Indian law, that was all complied with. And under the code, we basically, in order to insulate this from any political influence, it turns the entire process over to this outside group. So, I will do whatever you direct. We'll give you an internal opinion. We can go outside, but essentially what I'm saying to you is that, as I understand the code, the only written opinion that really matters is the one that was issued by the hearing officer.
Okay, EJ.
I was just going to say, for clarity's sake, that those opinions that should be made public, so that there's no, I'd tell you, but I can't because the board has the legal opinion, but I can't give it to you because it's confidential and proprietary, that type of thing. So I think that should be allowed, so the membership think it's more or less, it's not going to change what's here. But it will ensure that if things were missed or things were bypassed or things weren't followed, which I don't do in some order,
So the code does provide that the entire proceeding must be open to the public, and I would know no basis on which the tribe could assert that the opinions are not available.
I think it is posted already. Oh, you mean the other one? Oh, okay, I got it. He referencing the request for an opinion to evaluate. So, not this one, but the request to evaluate to see whether or not the hearing officer had the authority to go outside the boundaries of the law.
Well, we'll take your direction on that.
Okay. Yeah, and the only final thing, and I don't think this should affect what we're doing tonight, but because we got to move forward. The only final thing I would say is I think that the hearing officer has the authority to hear it completely, and that the board doesn't have the authority to override it. But I think that they also have to act within our laws. Right. And so the question is whether or not the hearing acted within the law with respect to the Constitution and the removal code with respect to the 60 days. So I'm reading the opinion, and it's very clearly that they acknowledge that they did not comply with it. The code says, no, I don't want to get into it. So I do think it needs to be reviewed. So, okay, so I did ask an elder from this unit if they would do a prayer for us and get us started on the right way.
Listen to the different people with their opinions regarding this removal, and that has been done, and now to do something regarding the filling the seat. We pray that it won't be just people's opinions and because of any personal feelings, but we pray that this will be done in a special way, that the right thing will be done to fill our unit seat for the furtherance of our Unit 5 here in Munising and Marquette. So we ask for wisdom upon the board of directors and also for peace of mind with the people that are in the audience here. And we ask you many, many blessings upon each and every one. Safe journeys to those that are riding for quite a distance. Take them home safely. In Jesus' name we ask.
Thank you, Administrator. Okay, attendance roll call.
Bridget. Here. Lana. TJ.
Here.
Kathy. Here. Darcy.
Here.
Kim. Here. Catherine.
Here.
Jennifer.
Here.
Denise.
Here.
Keith.
Here.
Denny.
Here.
Aaron.
Here. As noticed on the agenda is amending Tribal Code Chapter 10 Election Ordinance. What's the pleasure of the board? I will ask without objection on the add-ons after.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Without objection, we will add the declaring the Unit 5 seat vacant. It has been, actually I asked for that. Thank you, but it's on.
It's in the motion.
I see it, but so there's a question whether it should be in it or independent, and so. And then also we had, you were not noticed this, but we did add it, but we have a request for board travel. We have a board member that's going to testify on our behalf, opposing water diversion from Lake Michigan on the Wisconsin side. Because of a previous resolution, it requires board approval for the board member to travel outside of Michigan. So I'm going to ask without objection if we can add that board travel item to the agenda. Hearing no objection, it is so added. And so the first item then would be, I'd like to entertain a motion to declare the Unit 5 seat vacant.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Next up is amending Tribal Code Chapter 10 Election Ordinance. And do we read it first? Or?
Can I read the whole thing?
Yes. Just a revision.
Right, but
you
said whereas the Unit 5 director seat is vacant, and it is the responsibility of the Board of Directors to appoint a tribal member to fill the seat, and whereas the Board of Directors and the Election Committee have created a special advisory election process in order to ensure that the Board of Directors appoint someone to a vacant seat in a way that provides meaningful input by the membership, and whereas the special advisory election process does not allow a special advisory election's date of election to take place once the notice of election for a general election has been issued, and that prohibition is triggered here. And whereas this prohibition means the Board of Directors would appoint someone to the vacant Unit 5 seat absent meaningful membership input via a ballot process, and the Board of Directors finds that unacceptable. And whereas the Board of Directors wishes to amend Tribal Code Chapter 10 Election Ordinance so that the Election Committee may run a special advisory election for the vacant Unit 5 seat concurrent with the 2016 general election. Now therefore be it resolved that Tribal Code Chapter 10 Election Ordinance at Subchapter 2 Special Advisory Election is amended as attached.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. DJ.
So, as we discussed earlier, under this setup, there will not be a representative for Unit 5 until July of this year, correct?
That's correct.
This is as fast as we can do it. Or is that as fast as this allows us to do it?
Point of information.
Yes.
I thought you said we could call a special meeting as soon as that is over with, which could be the very next day, which may not be July.
Oh.
And then,
So we could, just as a point of information, to address that portion of it, I don't think that's all of us concerned, but we could motion to, I would say after you do this, keep this clean, make a motion to appoint the person the day after the special advisory, the day after the election's concluded.
Okay, so in that case, it would be June 23rd. So
That's right, 24th.
24th.
Yeah.
So it speeds it up a whole week.
But it also addresses the earlier issue that you had that we don't know what a new board would do if they would honor the outcome of the special advisory.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely one of my concerns, is
Right.
that you know, 7 of you might not be here. Some maybe.
That's not what it's going
But it doesn't provide representation for Unit 5 for that time period, which is, yeah, that's 6 months, 5.5 months. That's not acceptable to me. And it's not their job, it's our job. And that's what the Constitution says, so I will stick to that.
Okay, Lana and then Denise.
Well, we spent probably 2.5 hours this afternoon discussing this resolution, and I would just hope that Jay or Aaron would have a chance to explain the reason why this is in front of us, because we did have discussions about that. It is a recommendation from the election committee. It is obviously up to us what we do, but I think that this has to be explained a little bit so that the membership up here knows why we're even considering this.
Sure.
My name is Aaron Schleilber. I'm with the Tribe's Legal Department. To my left is Jamie McCurchie. He is the chairperson of the election committee. And the three behind me are members of the Tribe's election committee. Last week, the election committee notified the board of directors that the current election code does not allow them to use a special advisory election to generate a name which they could choose to appoint to the board. In 2013, the Tribe's election code was amended to prohibit the running of a special advisory election if the special advisory election's election day would take place in the middle of a general election, which lasts just around 6 months. So we informed the board there was a prohibition against using the advisory election, which left them with the clean and simple task of appointing an individual to fill the vacant Unit 5 seat by whatever means they were able to generate on their own. Thereafter, the chairman asked the election committee if they could generate an amendment to the Tribe's election code that would allow the election committee to run a special advisory election with the intent of that election offering some guidance given by the membership to the board on who the membership wanted the board to appoint to that vacant seat. Today at 2 o'clock, the election committee and the board spent a couple hours going through an amendment to Chapter 10, which they have in front of them that does that. The amendment in front of them allows the election committee to run a whole election for the vacant Unit 5 seat concurrent with the 2016 general election. What that means is, for the purposes of the membership and purposes of the election committee, we would treat this vacant seat just like a normal election, meaning anyone who wanted to run for that seat would go through the normal process any candidate would do. You would get a ballot, a primary ballot, you would get a general election ballot. The only distinction would be somewhere on the ballot you'll see a designation reminding all of us that you're voting in a special advisory election. So for the few hours we covered this today, the board and the committee covered all of the negatives and positives. A couple of key negatives, a couple of key downsides to this particular plan, as Director Hoffman had pointed out, is it leaves the Unit 5 seat vacant until, at the best, late June, which is an unfortunate reality that the election committee is unable to help anyone with. We explored whether or not the election committee was able to hold an election faster. The code envisions that special advisory elections are supposed to take place over a roughly 3-month period. The couple of differences, though, trip us up in this circumstance. That process does not envision using a primary, which means at the end of the day, if we ran a normal run-of-the-mill special advisory election, we would provide the board the results. There may be 6 names, there may be 10 names, there may be 12 names, there may be 2 names. We have no idea. And beside each name would simply be the vote count. There's a concern that when we run an election that way, whoever the board appoints may very well not have a mandate from the membership, meaning that individual may be appointed to the board with only 7 or 8% of the votes. The tribe has learned over the years through past elections that a primary is a good thing, and having a strong mandate for a sitting board member is a very good thing. Second reason, the committee has been advising the board today that we are unable to run a fast and quick special advisory election while we're in the middle of running this upcoming 2016 general election, is that we have only so much manpower, we have only so much administrative ability, and running an election for the Sioux Tribe, given its size, is a large and complex and time-consuming process. And the election committee, after privately discussing the matter, felt that they were not comfortable trying to pull off a short advisory election while in the process of administering a large 2016 general election, and the possibility of a mistake happening, of a slip-up happening, was substantial enough to give them pause and give them worry. That was debated at quite length today between the committee and the board, and I can tell you that some of the board does think that is an option, and unfortunately the committee's pushing back and advising them. We're telling you we don't think we can do it. We worry we would make a mistake. We understand that the result is you have an empty seat until late June. We understand that that is an extremely unfortunate situation, and you may not be happy with it. We apologize. We only can do what we can do. In weighing that, we prefer to put forth a plan that we know we can pull off well. It's a system we're well versed in, and we think it's really the best option at this point in time. Beyond that, I think I've covered everything that the committee's put to the board today, and I turn it back to the board.
Okay. Next is Denise.
Don't ask me to repeat.
Well, we had that discussion today, and I supported that you push forward and do a special advisory election to fast track it. And I know you said you're short on manpower and that to do that, put the ballots out and stuff. And I did bring up the possibility of having it outsourced then, you know, have you guys do the internal work and then have the ballots and that done by an outside company or something to get it, you know, and you could do that and do the election the right way, the primary and that, but you could short track the dates and stuff. And, you know, and that's what I would support you doing. And I thought, DJ, that you did have something worked up to that effect, or you didn't? No?
We had 2.5 hours.
Right. Okay. All right. So anyway, that was my opinion, because I thought that waiting 6 months for them to fill the representative seat was way too long, and it should have been, you know, an election done in the fastest way possible.
Okay, Darcy.
Yeah, and I also agree that it should be a little quicker. Instead of waiting until the general election, 6 months without a unit rep out here. You guys can see a lot of changes, and you may lose a lot of things in 6 months. Just letting you know. It should be pushed to the forefront. There is savings with the seat being open. That funding could outsource it, like Director Chase said. It can be outsourced. And the election committee could take care of the internal things. We can do the background checks. As far as signatures go, taking 3 months to get 40 signatures, if you really want to be on this board, 40 signatures should take you not even a week, but give you 2 weeks. There's no reason, if somebody wants to be ambitious and be on this board, 40 signatures doesn't take a lot. If you know your community and you know your people. So I suggest that we would do that, fast track it, and like I said, the savings from the seat would pay for that extra cost from the outside. I think it needs to happen quickly. Thank you.
DJ, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on what Denise was saying. After looking at it, even in that, I mean, yeah, we had 2.5 hours. That's how much time we spent on it. I mean, really, that's not a lot. I mean, I say that